We made a pledge, we didn't stick to it, and for that I am sorry.
This is better now a Lib Dem.
I am sorry.
Number 2.
Sold!
While this was never part of the Lib Dem manifesto, the sale of the student loan book is a nice example of just how far Nick and his supporting Liberal Democrats have strayed from their belief that
I don't think young people should be saddled with so much debt before they've even taken the first step in the adult world of work.
You see, all those student loans that Nick hated so much in 2010 are owed to the state, and as wrong as Nick may believe them to be, they represent a small potential source of income for the state when interest rates are applied to them. But that source of income, like the one that came from the Royal Mail, was sold off on the cheap, with Beaker himself wheeled out from his governmental office to announce that £900 million worth of student loans taken out before 1998 were now owed not to the state but to debt collection agency Erudio. And it gets better, with Danny and his chums having sold this £900 million state asset to Erudio, a company known for persistent debt recovery practices, for just £160 million, or 18% of its actual value, after none other than Erudio themselves advised them on the value. 18%, with the decision and sale price being labelled as extremely concerning, senseless, and stupid. And this sale now means, in the words of the NUS chairman, that the public will be subsidising a private company making a profit from public debt. Still, a potential 82% loss, which, despite allowing for a short-term mega profit for a private investor,
$22 million in 3 fucking hours! Can you believe it?
will also remove a source of income from any future government, suggesting that instead of this being long-term policy planning, it is instead short-term corruption. But, like the Lib Dems' principles, this loss was quickly forgotten when Gideon, with the full support of the government-placed Lib Dems, announced plans to sell off the rest of the loan book, with the loans from 1998 to 2012, which together have a value of around $40 billion, up for grabs for just $12 billion, with any future repayments of capital and interest from these loans being lost. This move, which has left Nick less than optimistic of his chances of securing the student vote, was detailed in a top-secret privatisation report commissioned by the Rothschild bank dubbed Operation Hero. Because if you're selling off a major state asset on the cheap to private investors, you'd want to get the guys whose $700 million investment scheme went down the pan a few months before. Still, Operation Hero was supposed to be kept secret after being submitted to the business department. But after a Freedom of Information request, the report was released into the public domain, with over 90% of it being redacted. Except, in an absolutely genius move, the individual in charge of redacting this report failed to use a strong enough marker, and the entire paper was visible. Yep, Operation Hero, commissioned by the Rothschilds, claimed that the low interest rate that students had signed up to was off-putting to potential investors, and should therefore be scrapped, meaning that millions of students will face sharp increases in their education debt. There was also a call for a synthetic hedge, whereby the government will pledge to underwrite all risk associated with the debt, essentially acting as a guarantor to help ensure that private investors never lose a penny. So, just to recap, the Lib Dems, despite pledging to abolish student loans, are now part of a government where the student loans, which represent a significant source of income for the state, are being sold off at substantially less than their market value to private investors, with the amount students owe now rising and the government underwriting any loss for a private company. Well, not surprisingly, this led again to protests. There's a bit of a theme developing here, with students in London and Birmingham targeting Lib Dem offices, with John Hemingway having his office occupied and both Vince and Ed Davey being targeted. This despite the brilliant script recommended in Operation Hero that ministers should argue that current students should accept these changes as, we all live in difficult times, you have a deal which is so much better than your younger siblings. Hard to believe that didn't work. Still, when all's said and done, university places have been cut by 25,000. and there's been a 40% drop in some areas of applications. And now, with the sale of the loan book, which will prop up failing coalition policies while allowing for private profit off the backs of English students, would suggest not only corruption, but also that Nick and his merry band of MPs pledged to put
fairness back into our society
and prevent
young people saddled with so much debt before they've even taken the first step in the adult world of work.
is once again a
promise broken.